Welcome back, guys, gals, and non-binary pals to What Makes a Monster and What Makes a Man. This is Chapter 13, I'm Dreaming of Going. Here's the summary. Someone has been missing. It's time to track them down. Dipper pretended like everything was fine, like he wasn't hosting a villainous demon. He and Mabel had a water balloon fight. They sang karaoke. They enjoyed themselves. Then Mabel noticed that Waddles was missing. Dipper had seen Waddles in the kitchen the night before. Dipper had been the last one to see Waddles. He had lost Mabel's pig. He wasn't good enough. He was horrible. He was hurting his sister. They searched the property but found nothing. They asked customers, but none of them had seen a pig. Waddles was gone. "We need to split up." Grunkle Ford strapped a ray gun to his waist. "Soos and Wendy, stay here. Call us if he shows up. Stan, you take Mabel and look around town. I can go check on some of the traps." Which meant Great Uncle Ford would be exploring on his own. He could get hurt. If Dipper hadn't been there, the trap wouldn't have been set off. Stephen interrupted Dipper's train of thought. "You shouldn't go alone. Something could happen. You wouldn't want to be stranded alone." "Don't worry, I'll be fine. These traps were recently put up. Nothing I can't handle. Go with Dipper and ask the creatures we're on good terms with if they've seen Waddles. We'll meet back up here in 5 hours. Ford walked out the door. Stan led Mabel to the car. Stephen waved his arm towards the door. "Lead the way." They found several times at the base of a waterfall. Stephen stared at the members for a moment, watching them swim and lounge. He shuddered. This feels like the human zoo. Human zoo. That had been one of Stephen's stories, a race of aliens that kept humans in captivity in honor of dead royalty. Dipper felt a shiver run down his spine. Was that normal fear, or was it Bill? Never mind all that. Focus on Mabel. He stepped forward. "Have any of you seen Waddles?" "Sorry, Dipper, haven't seen him since last summer. We haven't seen Mabel since last summer either. Maybe ask the gnomes. Schmebulok knows a lot of secrets." They did not go ask the gnomes. They were headed toward the multi-bear's cave when a tree started to fall towards them. Dipper knew he should run, knew he should get out of the way. Instead, he closed his eyes. Hopefully Mabel would be all right without him. Nothing happened. Dipper opened his eyes. Stephen had summoned a barrier around them. Dipper had done nothing. Dipper had accepted that he would die. Dipper was a failure, a coward, weak. He had been unable to stop Bill. Now he couldn't react to a falling tree. If Bill came back, Dipper would be useless. "Dipper the Destroyer, you cannot be here, not until you are a real man." It was Chutzpah. Dipper resisted the urge to scream. Of course they would run into the manotaurs. Why would anything go well for him? He was horrible. He hosted Bill. He had lost Waddles. He hurt Mabel. The one thing he wasn't supposed to do. "What's this?" Beardy poked Dipper in the chest. Dipper looked down at his vest with his pin, his trans pin. He felt his stomach drop. "Isn't that the Dipper turned and ran away. He jumped over tree roots and ducked under branches. His breath was ragged. He ran until he could go no further. He sat down on a nearby stump. Breathe in, hold, out, in, hold, out. It wasn't working. Fiddle with the worm on a string. Pink, because it was Mabel's favorite color and she thought it would help him. Pink like Waddles, who he had lost. The texture felt wrong against his skin. Makes sense that it feels wrong. Bill's a part of you. Everything you do is wrong. You are wrong. "Dipper, are you okay?" Dipper spun around, nearly dropping the worm on a string. Stephen approached him, slowly. Was he okay? No, but it didn't matter. He didn't matter. What mattered was Mabel, and he had hurt Mabel. Dipper couldn't let Stephen know. If Stephen knew, Stephen would hate him, fear him, hurt him. But he couldn't pretend like he was fine, not when Stephen had seen him panic. "Yeah, I'm pretty sure they all know I'm trans now." "Why is that a problem?" "Well, they're all about manliness, and Dipper, I'm going to level with you. I don't understand the need to be manly. You are who you are. That's the end of it. It's not the fact they won't see me as manly. I already accepted that. But there are people who hate me purely for being trans." Dipper bit his lip. People used to have these expectations for what I was going to be like when I grow up. I just feel like I'm letting them down. I do understand that. For years, I thought I was supposed to be my mom. First it was with the gems, then I gave myself over to Homeworld. When the Diamonds found out Mom was Pink Diamond, they tried to bring her back. They thought if they treated me like they used to treat her, that she would come back. But I managed to convince them that I was my own person, that I didn't have to be Rose Quartz or Pink Diamond, that I was more than that part of me. The broadcast, where White Diamond had said Stephen would be taking his throne. Stephen, who was in Gravity Falls, so probably refused. How did you get them to understand? Stephen shut his eyes for a moment. I don't think it'll work for you. It involved my gem, but I can promise you this. Eventually, people will realize and accept who you are. Even if they hate your guts, it's okay, because you will be yourself. That's all that really matters. Stephen put his hand on Dipper's shoulder. When you're ready, let's go ask them if they've seen Waddles. Dipper was not ready. He wanted to curl up under a blanket and never come out, but Mabel needed him. He had to fix what he had done. He stood up, squeezed his worm on a string, put it back in his pocket, and led Stephen back toward the man cave. When they went inside, a pot was sitting over a fire in the middle of the room. There were trans flags hanging on the walls. Patch.Work noticed them. Look, Dipper the Destroyer has returned! Dipper knew he wasn't supposed to be here. He had failed to kill the multi-bear. He had walked away from the manotaur's expectations for him. I just wanted to ask you guys a quick question. Have any of you seen... Leaderar stepped into the room. Dipper clenched his hands into fists to try and keep them from shaking. Before you ask questions, you must undergo the ceremony. Come forward, Dipper the Destroyer. Dipper looked at Stephen. Stephen shrugged. This did not seem safe. They should leave, before he makes an even bigger mess. They could go back to the mystery shack and face Mabel. When she asked if they had found Waddles, Dipper would have to tell her that he didn't ask because he was broken, that he had done nothing, then run away. Mabel could not know he was broken. Dipper squared his shoulders and stepped towards Leaderar. He was afraid, terrified. Leaderar wasn't Bill, but he could crush him with a finger. This could get them information on Waddles, so Dipper had to try. Leaderar dipped a finger into the pot. It came out covered in a golden liquid. Hold out your hand. Dipper swallowed. This was for Waddles. This was for Mabel. He held out his hand and waited for the burning liquid to be poured onto his skin. Maybe it was acid and would eat away at his skin, or a potion without an antidote. Leaderar started to draw on Dipper's hand. The liquid was not burning, it was barely warm. Today I declare that Dipper the Destroyer has proved himself. In Red Bull I proclaim that he is now a true man. Leaderar stepped back. The symbol for man was on Dipper's hand, drawn in Red Bull by the leader of the Manotaurs. Dipper, Dipper. The Manotaurs were chanting. Stephen gave him a thumbs up. This made no sense. Dipper didn't deserve this. He hadn't done anything to prove himself. He hadn't killed the multi-bear, and he didn't regret it. He had lost Waddles. He was the reason Bill nearly succeeded. He was Bill's puppet. Bill was inside of him. I don't deserve this. He said it quietly, but everyone seemed to have heard him. Chutzpar knelt so that he was looking Dipper in the eye. Yes, you do. This ceremony is performed after you overcome a great trial to prove you are a man. You have had to fight harder than any of us to do so. The Manotaurs accepted who Dipper was. They thought more of him because of it. Would his family do the same if they knew about Bill? Could they grow to accept that he had changed? Or maybe Bill had never been inside of him in the first place. Maybe he had been overreacting, blowing things out of proportion. Maybe all of this was over nothing. No, it was not nothing. Bill was in there. Dipper could tell. He was waiting for the perfect moment to reach out and take control, waiting to turn Dipper into a demon. So, Dipper the Destroyer, Testosterar slammed his hand onto Dipper's shoulder. Dipper jumped. It wasn't a flinch, he had really been startled. He had no reason to flinch. What was it you wished to ask? Oh, I was just wondering if any of you have seen Mabel's pig? 4 legs, pink, cuddly? Yeah, that's him. Dipper had to control his breathing. He couldn't lose control now. He had to keep it together. We saw that creature a few days ago. We tried to chase it down, but it ran onto the middle of the lake to escape us. Stephen reached out his hand. Testosterar moved away from Dipper in order to shake it. That must have been Lion, unless Waddles can walk on water too. Dipper, can Waddles walk on water? What? No. Then it was Lion. Stephen turned towards the rest of the Manotaurs. Thank you for having us here. The ceremony for Dipper was very thoughtful and means a lot, but we need to get going. You guys should try yoga. Stephen wrapped his arm around Dipper's shoulder to lead them out of the cave. They walked for a few minutes in silence. Dipper got control over his breathing. He took a deep breath. Thank you for getting me out of there. No problem. Are you feeling okay? Yeah, I just am really worried about Waddles. Stephen looked unconvinced. Was Dipper not good enough at hiding it? Could Stephen tell something was going on? What would Dipper say if he got asked about it? He had to keep it secret, keep it hidden. He had to keep it hidden from Mabel. Then Stephen nodded. Hopefully the others had better luck. Soos came up to them as they neared the mystery shack. He shook his head, which meant they had not found Waddles, which meant Waddles was gone. Dipper walked towards Mabel and the Grunkles, who were sitting on the porch steps. Mabel was crying. Dipper had caused this. He had hurt Mabel. He didn't need Bill's help to be a terrible person. Grunkle Stan handed Mabel another tissue. "Why don't we go inside? We can make wanted posters for him." Ford rolled his eyes. "You mean missing posters?" Close enough. Come on, kiddo." Grunkle Stan opened the door of the mystery shack and led Mabel toward the living room. Dipper stayed behind her. "Waddles!" Mabel perked up and ran into the living room. Sitting in the chair were Waddles and Abuelita. Mabel grabbed Waddles and hugged him tightly. "Oh, Soos, you are done early. Sorry, Waddles, we'll have to finish the entry tomorrow." "What entry? You aren't fixing doors again, are you?" Soos glanced suspiciously at the nearby door frames. "Oh no, we like to read your diary while you're busy at work. Usually we walk to the park, but you all left so we had the place to ourselves. Go sit down on the table. I made pasta for dinner." If Waddles had been with Abuelita, it meant Dipper hadn't lost Waddles. Instead, he let everyone think Waddles had been missing. He should have known better. Should have asked where Abuelita was. Should have realized that Waddles couldn't even get outside. Dipper had caused everyone to waste their day. He was unsure how much he would be able to eat. Everyone was gathered around the television, watching Duck-tective reruns when Stephen's phone went off. He slipped out of the room for a few minutes and came back looking subdued. "Yellow says she needs the missing shards in order to repair the carnelian. You said there was a severed head somewhere? That the shards are reanimating?" Ford nodded. "Yeah, Larry King's wax head lives in the vents. We can track him down tomorrow. I think we did enough today." Meaning Dipper had wasted everyone's time today, and now they couldn't deal with an important issue. Stephen nodded. "That makes sense. Missions always went better when I was getting enough sleep." It made sense logically. Sleep and be well rested for the next day. But all that awaited Dipper at night was Bill. He wanted to argue, to insist they go searching now. Do a simple adventure, one with no risk of Mabel hating him or everything being destroyed. But today had been emotionally draining for Mabel. But Mabel's needs came first, which meant that they would need to deal with Larry King's head in the morning. After the episode finished, Ford sent the twins to bed so they would be ready to track down the statue the next day. Mabel stayed up for a bit, working on a new sweater. Dipper scrolled through some conspiracy blogs he had been neglecting. An hour later, they turned off the lights. Dipper fell asleep to the sound of Waddles snoring, and he woke up to the sound of Mabel hyperventilating. That's all for Chapter 13. Here's Chapter 14, Going. Here's the summary. Stephen contemplates the morality of sending Jasper after someone, and other harmless shenanigans. "Mabel, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" Dipper sat down on Mabel's bed and put an arm around her shoulder. It's Gideon." She held out her phone. "Somehow he got my number and started messaging me." "Can't you block him?" "I did, but he has a bunch of numbers." Her breath was heavy. "Mabel, breathe with me, okay? In 2, 3, 4, 5, hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Her breathing calmed, and Mabel pulled Waddles onto her lap. Dipper had no solution. He was supposed to have a solution. Supposed to help Mabel when something happened. Supposed to deal with Gideon. Instead, he squeezed her arm. "Why don't we get something to eat?" Mabel nodded and let go of Waddles. 3 of them made their way to the kitchen. They sat on the table but didn't move to get food. Stephen walked in and studied Mabel's face. "What's going on?" Mabel shook her head. Dipper spoke up. "This creepy guy Gideon is obsessed with Mabel. Somehow he got her number and now he's bothering her." "He didn't listen when you told him you weren't interested?" He tried to kill Dipper for coming between us, and built a giant robot, and tried to blow us up with fireworks, and..." Mabel trailed off. Dipper could see tears in her eyes. "How old is this guy?" "He's almost 11. Stephen frowned. "That's too young for me to punch in the face or threaten. Guess I'll have to talk with him." Dipper shivered. Weird Mageddon. Mabel trapped in a bubble. The key around Gideon's neck. "I tried that. I managed to convince him that keeping Mabel prisoner isn't love, but he's still bothering her." Something in Stephen's eyes made Dipper stiffen. He felt very glad he wasn't Gideon. Then Mabel made a strangled noise. "He's calling! What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" Stephen took the phone from Mabel's hand and answered. You should not have this number. No, this is not Mabel. This number is essential for communication between Earth and Homeworld. Call again, and you will be dealt with accordingly. Goodbye." He hung up and handed the phone back to Mabel. "If he bothers you again, I'll send Jasper after him." "Thank you, but my phone isn't important to Gem communication. You lied to him." "Of course not. If something were to happen to my phone, and I needed to contact the Gems, I might have to use yours. Him bothering you could interfere." Stephen winked at Dipper and walked over to the fridge. "What do you two want for breakfast?" Stephen had managed to fix the situation. Mabel was safe, and it was okay. There was nothing to worry about. Gideon would back off and everything would be fine, right? Unless it just made Gideon angry. He decided to take it out on them. Or do something worse. Gideon had summoned Bill to steal the mystery shack. Made a deal with him in order to have Mabel. Never mind all that. They had a statue to deal with. Soos suggested using the crystal flashlight so they wouldn't have to tear the mystery shack ventilation system apart. While the others argued over who would go, Dipper ran upstairs to grab the flashlight from his bag. They argued about whether Mabel and Dipper should be allowed to go, if they should be left out of it because they were kids. This was ridiculous. Every moment that was wasted was a moment lost, a moment less to solve the problem, a moment for Bill to grow stronger. "Hello, I heard you all talking about me and thought I would come see what was going on." The head sat behind the grate in the living room. Stephen reacted first, approaching with his arms held up. "Carnelian, I'm Steven Universe. I can help you reunite with your other shards. You don't have to be alone or missing any pieces. You can be whole again." Larry King stuck out his tongue. Lying on it was a gem shard. Stephen took it gingerly, and the head went still. It had been so simple. Why was it so simple? Stephen turned towards them, smiling softly. "The shards just want to be whole again. Now Yellow can heal her." Stephen's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face split into a huge grin. After bubbling the shard and sending it off, Stephen went into town. Part of Dipper wanted to follow, wanted to investigate, but Mabel had been attacked earlier today. Gideon had hurt her. He had no way to make sure she was okay. "Don't worry, Dipper. I already had an appointment booked with Grenda's mom today. I can talk to her about it." Mabel didn't need him anymore. She had Stephen to deal with threats and someone else to talk about her problems. All Dipper does was put her at risk, put everyone at risk. Dipper spent the day wandering aimlessly around the shack. He could hear the ghost of Bill's laughter ringing in his ears. Mabel ended up calling to ask Uncle Stan if she could sleep over at Candy's house. The attic felt empty without her. At lunch the next day, Abuelita pointed out to him that Stephen had never returned. Dipper couldn't find the energy to care. Mabel came back smiling and laughing, but Dipper felt hollow. That evening, Mabel set up the karaoke system. There were a few songs in when Stephen walked into the living room. He smiled at them all and sat down on the floor. Stan frowned. "Where were you last night, kid?" "My dad was in town, so he rented a motel room and I stayed with him. It had free ice. Sadie and Shep had a show nearby, so he came to visit." "Why didn't you call us, dude?" Soos held out one of the pizza boxes. Stephen took a slice. "I guess I didn't think of it. Never really had to before. The Gems would leave me alone overnight when I was younger, so..." The group fell silent, and Dipper pulled out his worm on a string. Mabel held up the microphone. "I guess that means it's Stephen's turn. Why don't you pick for me?" Mabel ended up settling on Cray Cray. Stephen didn't know the song, but he managed to follow along. He laughed once it was over. "Wait, were these those guys we met in the woods?" "Yeah." Dipper wound the worm on a string around his fingers. "It was different than what I'm used to." Mabel tilted her head. "What type of songs do you normally sing?" "Emotion-based." "I've never heard that band." "Now everyone is gone except..." Mabel's eyes narrowed. "Come on, Grunkle Ford, you need to sing." She handed him the microphone and started to flip through songs. "Stop. That one. Carrie Moonbeam." Mabel hit play. The music was slow and had a lilt to it. Great Uncle Ford glanced at Mabel and then started to sing. Dipper froze at the lyrics. "Looking for your place in the universe. Don't you know the universe is looking too? Looking for its place in you." Bill. Dipper had tried to move forward, tried to forget, tried to find himself, but Bill wouldn't go away. Bill wanted to destroy the universe and had a place inside of him. "And now it's coming through, your dream is coming true." Bill swore he would not be freed, that Dipper would stand at his side, that Dipper had no other purpose to fulfill. "Welcome to the party, Mr. Universe." This party never stops. Time is dead and meaning has no meaning. Existence is upside down and I reign supreme. Dipper could hear Bill's laughter echoing around him. Anything you can be, the things you see and cannot see are Mr. Universe, Mr. Universe. The song faded away and Dipper tried to control his breathing. Mr. Universe? Hey, that's like you! Mabel turned and frowned. Why was she frowning? Was it something Dipper had done? It must have been. Maybe the song had made her realize what a threat he posed, what a risk he was, that she would be better off without him. Stephen, where are you going? Dipper looked toward Stephen. He was staggering towards the door. I'm going to head to bed. Good night, everyone. The mood was subdued after that. Mabel suggested that they do a group number, then turn the system off. She chose Baba, but Dipper couldn't focus on the music. That night, Dipper looked up at the original version of the song Ford had sung. Listening to a stranger sing the words was worse. At least Ford's voice had been familiar. Dipper turned it off. But that didn't stop the lyrics from playing in his head over and over as he tried to sleep. Your dream is coming true. Alright, that's the end of chapter 14. I forgot how that song from Steven Universe Future actually sounds, so the tune was probably way off. Which is ironic because that is one of my favorite songs, and it's a shame you can't find it on, like, Pandora. Gotta find it on YouTube. I also really like how Rebecca Sugar named the character who sung that fictional song Carrie Moonbeam, which was a very clear reference to Ziggy Stardust. I thought that was pretty cool. But anyways, that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening. Patch out.